नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्. Welcome all of you to this another session of Mahabharata. So we are with Pandavas, except Arjuna, going along with Lomasha Maharshi to different tirthas, the holy places. So as we are going through these holy places, we are hearing about stories of great saints, great kings, and the importance of that place. What's the auspiciousness of that place? So the Sanatana Dharma, and as well as the Bharatavarsha, what great saints and the great souls had lived in different parts of Bharat. So we continue to hear that. Last time we went through the story of Chavana Maharshi, right? We know how he got his youth back through Ashwini gods, and then he made sure that Ashwini gods are part of all the yagas. They will also get part of that yaga havis. So we went through that part, and then the Pandavas, they continue the Tirtha Yatra, and they come to another place near the Yamuna banks, Archika mountain, and this is where the famous king Mandhata did his yagas. That's what Lomasha Maharshi tells Pandavas. They talk about the holy river there, and in Krutayuga, Mandhata, one of the greatest kings of Krutayuga, he did his the yagas at this place. So who is this Mandhata? So that's what we will go through some part of that story. Here is Yudhishthira asking Lomasha Maharshi to tell him about Mandhata. So some of you might have heard this famous Subhashita, this shloka, Mandhata sa mahipatihi krutayugalankara bhuto gataha seturyena mahodadau virachitaha vasau dashasyantakaha अन्ये चापि युधिष्ठिरा प्रभृतयो याता दिवं भूपते नैकेनापि समं गता वसुमति नूनं त्वया यास्यति. So this is the famous shloka where you will hear about Mandhata. There is not many references, but this is one Subhashita people quote a lot. So I thought, I'll give you some context here. So in Mandhata, who was the greatest king of Krutayuga, he left the world, right? And Sri Rama, so along with the help of the Vanara Sainya, he built that Setu, right? Rama Setu. And he, through that Setu, he went and killed Ravana and got the whole, and the earth. And then we had the story of Mahabharata that we are going through. Yudhishthira and his brothers, they also left for heavenly abode, right? So, but in all these cases, the earth did not accompany any one of them. So there's an interesting story behind this Subhashita. I thought that's also, very meaningful in this context when we are studying this Dharma Shastra, Mahabharata. So I'll briefly touch on that. It's not part of Mahabharata, but it is, it's there in this book, Bhoja Prabandha by Pallala Deva. Bhoja was the king of, as you all know, Dharanagara, right? But the story goes when Bhoja was just 5 years old. He was a small boy of 5 years. His father, Sindhula of Dharanagara, he was getting old. And, his son was, he had the son at a very late age. Bhoja, his son, was just 5 years old when Sindhula passed away. So, since the boy was just 5 years old, Sindhula's brother Munja took over the kingdom. and he was ruling. He was enjoying, the whole empire. That that now I am the Mahipati, the king. Uh, See, the meaning of Mahipati is also interesting, right? Pati is husband, Mahi is the Bhumi. So the kings are called, the husband of the earth because they rule over the earth. They are called Mahipati. So he thought that this whole land I will rule, and I'll be the famous for that, and I have all this prosperity, and I'll be the greatest king. Then one astrologer came and told him that your nephew Bhoja, he's going to rule this land for 55 years. Then Munja got worried. So if Bhoja takes over, it's as if I'm dead, though if I'm living. So I have to give up all this land and all this rule that I'm currently enjoying. So he hatches a plan, calls Vatsaraja from Angadesha, and asks him to take Bhoja to forest and behead him and get me his head. So a small boy, 5-year-old boy, Bhoja, Vatsaraja is not interested, but it's the order of the emperor. So he takes him to the forest, and before he could behead his brother, Vatsaraja's brother says, he's a young boy, don't do this. And meanwhile, they observe Bhoja, a small boy, is writing something on the leaf, and with his own blood, he is writing. So they go and see what he has written, and Bhoja says, I have written something in this letter. Go and give this to my uncle. So as per the advice of his brother, Vatsaraja doesn't kill Bhoja. He hides him in a shelter and comes back and gives this, and he gives a dummy head and also the letter, that this is what that boy wrote. And when he opens the letter, this is the Subhashita that he sees. That 5-year-old kid had written this shloka, which says that greatest kings have come and gone. None of them could take the earth along with them. What they could carry is only the good deeds, the dharma, whatever they did. Only the good deeds accompany you when you leave this earth. So there's no, the point in, holding on to this, our wealth, the earth, the land, all of that. That's only the temporary. It won't come with you. Having seeing this letter, Munja is shocked, that, and he realizes what a grave mistake he had committed, and he tries, he cries and tries to kill himself, and then a sage comes there and stops him and says that Bhoja is still alive, and that's the story. So it's a beautiful the story, and there are a lot of such great stories in this book, Bhoja Prabandha by Ballala Deva. So you could read whenever you get a chance. But let's come back to our Mahabharata. The inquiry continues. Yudhishthira asks Lomasha Maharshi, just like we went through this shloka, he asks, who is Mandhata? How did he get his name? Can you please tell me that story? So Lomasha Maharshi starts, and he narrates the story of Mandhata. So there was this famous king in Ikshvaku dynasty called Yuvanashva. He's also called as Yavanashva in some places, Yavanashva or Yuvanashva. So he performed several sacrificial rites, and he was known for giving very generous, magnificent gifts to all the sages, all the people who come to him. He was the excellent of all the virtuous men, and he performed 1,000 Ashwamedhas. But he had one grief, that he didn't have a son to continue his progeny and to continue the Ikshwaku dynasty. So he was like worried. So finally, so he said, there's no point in me just ruling like this. Let me, spend whatever the time that's remaining with me in the forest as a sage, doing vratas. And so he entrusts his kingdom to his minister and heads out to the forest. So he keeps very ascetic life, and lot of the upavasas, going on hunger with some of the vratas, and so he continues like that. Meanwhile, the sages and the people, they love Yavanashva so much. They want to do something to get rid of his worry, and also have the next king to look after all of them. So our Chavana Maharshi again comes into the picture. Bhrigunandana, Chavana Maharshi, and the other sages, they will be performing a yaga in the forest. So they, take holy water and do a lot of the tapas and the yaga. And the plan is to give that water to the king's wife, Yavanashva's wife, so that she can get a son who will be like Indra, and more as famous as his father, and look after the whole Bharatavarsha. That was what the sages have thought through. They have done this tapas. The holy water is ready, which has to be given, but it's late in the day, so they keep it there. So they're all tired of conducting all the rituals, the rites. So they keep it there, and they think that let's give it to them, give it to her in the next morning. So that's their plan. Meanwhile, Yavanashva, who is roaming around in the forest, he happens to be around the same place because of all the vratas and the strict rituals that he's doing. He's very tired and he wanted water. So he comes to the hermit of the sages and asks for water. It's very late in the evening, they're all sleeping, and he's so tired, his voice doesn't have energy. He's like a very low voice is saying, can somebody give me some water? He's just asking for water, but nobody hears him. But then he enters inside and sees this the pot there with the water. So he thinks that, let me have this water. So he drinks the water so that he can quench his thirst, and whatever is remaining, so he just throws the water and just sleeps there and there in the hermit itself, because he is too tired. The sages get up in the morning and then they see this, alas, what has happened? All the tapas that we did, the yagas we did for our king, that water is gone. And who did this? Yavanashva, he wakes up, he admits that, he's the one who did this. Actually, the sages did the tapas for him, and he has committed an accident. To quench his thirst, he has taken the holy water itself, which they had done with all the mantras and the tapas. They had made it ready for his wife. So, but Chavana Maharshi says, whatever that we did cannot go on waste. Though it's an accident, now you have to, you will be giving birth to your son, not your wife. That's what the Rishi is telling. So this is like, very interesting story, right? The Purana aspects of it. Don't worry about, how all this happened. A lot of things are happening in the modern world too, right? We talked about how the womb was transferred in the story, in the story of Krishna Balarama, right? So, and the modern science is doing also a lot of wonders. Here too, now the man, the father has to give the birth, not the mother. So after 100 years, it's a long time, basically, Yavanashva gives birth to his son. through the left part of his body, the rib cage, as you could see in this picture. The rib cage breaks and the boy is born. So to see this wonder, even Indra comes to the ashram. We all know that Indra comes to test the people, but here he comes to help. So he comes and looks at the boy, the baby, and everybody is wondering how he's born out of his father. And the another astonishment is that his father, even after his rib cage is broken, he doesn't die. He just survives back. And how to feed the baby now? That's the question. And Indra says, I will feed. So that's where the name Mam Dasyasi, who will he suck? So he has to suck to get milk for his nourishment. Who will nourish the kid? Mam Dasyasi Mandhata. So that's how he gets the name. And Indra puts his the index finger, right, to the boy's mouth, and the baby starts chewing it, and the nectar flows. That's the amazing thing that everybody is the watching, as you could see in this picture, right? So the boy getting the nectar from Indra himself grows handsome, and he grows tall, and pretty soon he gets all the great the things that the king should have, the great armor which cannot be broken. He gets the great Ajagava, the bow, and the great astras from the gods, and he rules over all the three worlds. Vyasa Maharshi, Lomasha Maharshi here explains that just like Vishnu in Vamana Avatara got all the three worlds, our Mandhata also got all the three worlds just in a day. He conquered all the three worlds just in a day, and he did so many yagas, and even he shared the Indra's throne. Indra himself came down again to coronate him, and he ruled the whole Bharatavarsha for many years. So that's the story of Mandhata. There's not much the literature that's available about Mandhata, just like we had for if you come to Treta Yuga, we have Valmiki writing Ramayana. When we come to Dwapara, we have our Vyasa Maharshi describing the Krishna and the Pandavas through Bhagavata and Mahabharata, but we haven't found much things. We've only the references here in Mahabharata, and there are certain parts of Veda is also attributed to Mandhata, but other than that, we don't have much the inputs or the sources about Mandhata's glory and what all he achieved in his lifetime. So that's the story of Mandhata. Yeah, here you see the picture of Mandhata. And then we have the story further continues, the journey continues, and there is one more small story that comes up. It's again very the fascinating Purana kind of story, but there again every small the stories that Vyasa Maharshi brings in, there will be certain key dharma aspects or the key learnings that we can take from those stories. So this is a story of King Somaka, and he had he again the issue that he also had challenge in getting a son. So he married, went on marrying many the princesses, and none of them, through none of them he could get a son. So he finally ended up marrying, having 100 wives, 100 queens, and still he didn't have a son. So he was worried, and finally they had, one son. His name was Jantu, very unique name. Jantu also means an insect, but here we had uh, this boy named as Jantu. And since he was just born after long years, and they're like 100 mothers, so all of them, they had just this one son. So he had all the love, and from all of them, right? It happens, right? If just there is one kid in the family, the grandparents on the father's side, grandparents on the mother's side, there is a lot of pampering, right? This kid also was pampered like anything. Like, he had not one mother, 100 mothers, and the whole kingdom to look after him. So what happened? One day, an ant bit him on his back, right? Just an ant bit him on his back. The whole, all mothers started crying, "Oh, what happened to our son?" Right? It was just an ant, and they're like crying. And the king also came rushing. The whole kingdom, as if biggest calamity has come on them. Like all mothers started crying. Oh, something has happened to our son. What will we do? It's just one that we have. Oh, so just an ant, a small ant bite, right? Then the king, he took it very serious. If we have, like, one son like this, and they will keep troubling me all the time, and it's very dangerous. Even if something happens to him, the whole world will fall upon us. So he calls his Purohita and asks him, what should I do? This is the situation I am in. We just have one son, and even a small, if he sneezes, his mothers are like worried. So I can't, live like this. Tell me some, the plan, so that I can have, many more sons, and I don't have to worry, right? Then the priest says there is a plan, but it's a very hard one. You may not want to hear about it. But the king Somaka is determined. He wants a solution for his problem. So he says, I'm ready for it. What is that? So the priest says, you have to do a yaga. But the condition there is, again, this is, the Purana story. You have to take it in that sense. Don't try to build a lot of logic. He says, you have to offer your son to that yaga. Then you will get multiples of sons. So you will get many sons. So are you ready for that? King says, yes, let's do it. Let's go for it. So the yaga is set, and the Ritviks are ready to offer the son. But the mothers are mothers, right? They all come and say, no, this heinous crime cannot happen. How can you put your own son into a fire? That's never unheard of. So they try to snatch the Jantu from that the yaga, but the Ritviks pull him, and they finally offer. So what the Ritviks have told is, if all the mothers, all the 100 mothers, they smell the fire of the yaga, they will have sons. So that's it's not one, and they'll be born. And Jantu will also be reborn with a sign that he had a sign. Another baby will be born with the same sign. So they were confident. So they go ahead with that yaga and offer Jantu, and these all the mothers, they get fainted and they fall near the yaga mantap, and the yaga continues, because they are all there, all the 100 mothers, they breathe that the smoke of the yaga, and finally when they wake up, they are all in time they become pregnant and deliver 100 sons, and the Jantu is also reborn with the same sign. So, but that's not the key part of the story. That's the one part of the story. What happens is, later the priest dies, and even the king passes away. Somaka goes to heaven, and there, but he sees that the priest, the Purohit, is in hell because he committed this heinous thing of offering a baby, a small boy, into the yaga. He is in hell. So the question that part is what is important. The king asks, he didn't do it. He did it only on my request. I requested him to do that yaga, and on my request, he put the baby in the fire, right? So it's not him. I should be punished. Then Dharmaraja, that Yamadharma, he answers, for the crime one commits, you cannot put the responsibility on others. So that's the the part of the teaching that Dharma gives to this King Somaka. If you recollect, even in Ramayana, right, Valmiki, he was a hunter, right, and he had the Narada asks him, right, you remember, so to go, and because he used to rob the people, and he used to do it for whom? To take care of his family, but none of his family will share that the sin that he has committed. So the same way, the idea, the implementation, was from the Ritvik, though it was for the king. So the Ritvik has to bear this. So even if we do something bad, just to, for the sake of our friends or our family members, we will get that sin, not them. So that's what Yamadharma again, tells King Somaka. But King Somaka is such a great king. He says, even then, I cannot see this. So how can I, free him up? Yamadharma says, there is no way. The only thing, if you want, you can be with him. It's not required, but if you want, you can be with him, and then both of you, go back to Swarga after he completes his punishment. So King Somaka, on his own, he spends the time in Naraka along with his priest, and then both of them go to Swarga. So that's the story Lomasha Maharshi tells Yudhishthira. So that's the, let me share that. I think there's a, maybe this. Yeah. Nanya kartu palam rajan upabhungte kadachana imani tava drishyante palani dadatam vara. So for whatever act that you have done, you have to bear the fruits of that. You can't pass it on to others. So that's the meaning of this shloka. So then we come to the another very interesting, unique story that is sort of I would consider it as like one of the gems. Though it's a very small story that comes in Mahabharata, it has been taught by all of us in Bharat. When we were kids, we would have definitely heard that story. So what is that story? We will hear about it along with Yudhishthira. Right? So because Yudhishthira now, along with Lomasha Maharshi, they come towards Yamuna river, the tributaries of Yamuna called Jala and Upajala. So that's where they are. That's the place of, it's near Haryana and Punjab. Ushinara is the king. Okay, so they come to that place, and Yudhishthira wants to know more about Ushinara and his wife Madhavi and their son Shibi. So Ushinara and Madhavi. Madhavi is as a daughter of King Yayati. There's another very interesting story about Madhavi, but I'll cover that when we come to Udyoga Parva. That's another great lady which is not much dealt upon, but it's described in Udyoga, multiple places, but in Udyoga Parva, we go through her story in detail. But for now, we will get to the story of Shibhi Chakravarti, the son of Ushinara and Madhavi. So, just like all his ancestors, King Shibhi was known for his generosity. He had done so many yagas and great deeds. He was looking after his people so well that everybody was worshipping him like a god. And whenever he used to do sacrificial rites, the yagas, even the gods used to assemble to see the glory and how he used to conduct the yagas. And the gods used to talk amongst themselves, right? One day he will also become a god. So having heard that, Indra says, Indra wants to test, right? So let me test, how great Shibhi is. Everybody talks great about him, but let me put him into, as they say, acid test and find out is he truly worthy of becoming a god. And so he wants to come down and test. And that time, even Agni says, I will also join you. So both Indra and Agni come to Shibhi's place when the yaga is happening. So Indra takes the form of hawk, what you're seeing in this picture, and Agni comes in the form of pigeon or dove, right? So pigeon first comes and sits on the lap of Shibhi and tells him that, oh king, please protect me. It's trembling, there's a hawk that's behind me. Please protect me. I want to take shelter under your protection. So he's the one, Sharanagata Vatsala, right? If somebody comes for protection, he will never say no. So he will provide the protection at any cost. So he says, don't worry, pigeon, I will definitely protect you, don't worry. But at that time, this hawk, Indra, in the form of hawk, comes there and says, that's my prey. I have to eat that, the pigeon. So please give me that pigeon. I'm chasing that. You can't take away my food, right? So then Shibhi says, no, it has come and asked for protection under me. So I cannot release it. It will be adharma, right? I can't do that. I know that you come for food. I'll give you the other, the meat. You want the meat of cow, or the meat of buffalo, or meat of a deer. Anything else that you want, I'll give you. But I can't give this pigeon. So this hawk, gets into conversation with him. That's what are you talking, king? I am made, in the nature to go after this pigeon. So that's my natural prey. That's what I want. I don't want anything unnatural, right? This where we can remember that famous saying from Bhagavata, Jivo Jivasya Jivana, right? Basically, if you recollect all the food chain that we have, studied when we were we all know about the food chain, right? One animal has to eat another and another, there is a chain. So that's how the nature is made, right? And for the hawk, the pigeon, it's its natural prey, not a deer or a cow or a buffalo. So I can't, have that those things. This is my prey. Just give it to me. So when the king says, "Oh, you are talking, the dharma aspects, but I have to protect this pigeon," then again the hawk says, "See, what is a true dharma, right? You are following some dharma. It should not trouble others. it should not become, disturbing or cause pain to others. You follow your dharma, that's fine. But if it is not called a dharma, if it is affecting or disturbing, troubling others. So as long as you do something which doesn't impact others, that's not conflicting or, confronting, then it is the true dharma, right? But whatever you are doing here, this will make me starving, right? And I will die. And then what will happen to my kids, my wife, my family? Because, so I will die without food. The people who have assembled there also say, yes, this hawk, whatever says is correct. It's a, and the hawk further goes and says, right, if, you have to, weigh between what is right, what is wrong, and which is more, you know, uh, better dharma, rather, which is less harming. And here, my whole family is going to die because I don't have the food. So do something. Then the king says, yeah, I hear you. I mean, this, whatever you are talking is also has merit, you know, but I can compensate for this pigeon in some other way. If you want whole of my kingdom, I will give you that. Take that and, you know, uh, uh, relieve this pigeon. So the hawk says, if you are so keen on safeguarding this pigeon, protecting this pigeon, then I don't want your kingdom. Just give the equivalent amount of the flesh from your own body. I just want the flesh from your own thing. See how Indra is intelligently putting Shibi to test. It's very easy to give up things which is not ours, right? Even for king, though the kingdom belongs to him, right? He can give up that, some other animal he can kill and give, but now it's come to his own self, right? He has to give uh, the flesh from his own body, not from anywhere else. What would happen, right? We have seen situations when people will, they say that we are donating this, we are donating that, right? For just for word's sake. But when it really comes to the, the pinching them or paining them, they move away. But what did Shibi do? He's such a generous king. He said, "Oh, what a great relief! You are doing a great favor, Hawk. You agreed. For some condition. He's not worried about his life, that he has to give a flesh from his own body. That's least of the things for him when considering the life that he's protecting of pigeon, because the pigeon is asking for shelter. So King Shibi says, you have done a great favor to Hawk. Everybody is like mesmerized. What? The king is agreeing to give the flesh of his own body, and he's joyously accepting that because he's joyful because he could protect the pigeon. So they bring a balance, and yeah, this is the picture of the balance is there, and one side they put the pigeon, and on the other side he is trying to cut a piece of flesh from his thigh and put it there. And the gods won't stop. They want to test you to the core, right? And he puts the flesh. No, the pigeon is more heavier. Then he chops off other parts of his body, puts the flesh. The scale is not moving at all. And finally, Shibi himself sits on the scale. And that's when, as you could see, like all parts of his body are cut, and he's peacefully sitting on the scale. When he himself sits, there is balance. And then Indra and Agni, they come back in their own form. So Indra says, we are very pleased with your greatness. We never expected that you will go to this extent of offering your whole body, your flesh, just to save the life of a small pigeon, which is, all of us, people will just consider it's just irrelevant to save the life of a pigeon. But following the core, the values, the dharma of the protection, generosity, right? You didn't care for your own life. We are pleased, and they gave back his the body, and they bless him with lot of boons, and they head back to the heaven. So that's the great story of the Shibi, who's a role model, and for the generosity. Lomasha Maharshi tells Yudhishthira, as long as people keep talking about his story, his the fame will stay on this earth. Such a great the sacrifice that Shibi Chakravarti, Shibi Emperor did. So that's after that they further continue. This is very well depicted in Amara Chitrakatha. Definitely, the kids who are in this story session, they should read Amara Chitrakatha. They have depicted all the stories very close to the original Mahabharata. So and wonderful pictures, a beautiful narration. You should read the Amara Chitrakatha series.
I read Amara Chitrakatha.
Yeah, nice. Very nice. So then Lomasha Maharshi takes them further. So they keep going to multiple the places, and then they come to another ashram, another sage's place called Shvetaketu's ashram. So Yudhishthira is now again keen to hear about Shvetaketu's story. Who is Shvetaketu? So he asks Lomasha Maharshi. Lomasha Maharshi starts narrating another wonderful story. So we'll start that. We'll see how far we can go there. So Shvetaketu is Uddalaka, another sage. Sage Uddalaka's son is Shvetaketu. And Uddalaka also had a daughter, Sujata. So she was married to a sage by name Kahoda. Kahoda is the sage, and he's a teacher. Has studied Vedas well, and he considered himself a very mighty student of Vedas. Who? Kahoda. So when Kahoda's wife Sujata was pregnant, they are in the ashram. So the baby inside the womb is also listening to Vedas. That baby was amazing. Is going to be born with great qualities and great scholarship. That baby was like, even in the womb itself, had learned all the Vedas, listening to all the teachings, the lessons that Father Kahoda Maharshi, Kahoda Rishi, is teaching to his students. So one day Kahoda is teaching his students in the ashram, and he's there are some incorrect pronunciation, some of the meanings of the shlokas. I think he's not properly explaining. What happened? This baby, which is still yet to be born, which is inside the mother's womb, tried to correct his father. He said, Sarvam Ratri Madhyayanam Karoshi. The whole night you study. The baby is telling his father, right? Nedam Pitas Samyak Ivopavartate. So, though you study the whole night, but you are not, saying it right. You're not teaching it right. What happens? These rishis are, known for anger. Instead of, the appreciating that his son is, is able to figure out the mistakes, the father gets very angry. It's like, the youngsters trying to teach the elders, it will not go well, right? the elders also should, listen to the mistakes, but how it is given to them, or to what extent the kid should do, it is all should be balanced. But here Kahoda gets very upset, and that too the kid is talking when he is the amongst the students, so he sorts of feels ashamed that the baby which is yet to be born is teaching me how to teach the Vedas. Not even, it's not simple things, the Vedas. So he, in the anger, curses his own son. You are still in your mother's womb, and you dare to teach me how to recite Vedas, how to teach them. Yasmat kukshav vartamano bravishi tasmad vakro bhavita. You become vakra, distorted when you are born, right? That's the meaning. Vakro bhavitasya ashtakritvaha. You become distorted at 8 places. That's how the baby was born, with the distortions are sort of like twisted hands, twisted legs. Let me stop here, and maybe that's the story, the next story that we are having, right? So that's when we get into the story of Astavakra. So the famous sage Astavakra was born with the curse from his father. Let me show you the picture of Astavakra. Yeah, share. Yeah. Oops. Where is that? Yeah. Here is Astavakra, one of the famous scholars of the Vedic times. And just like Bhagavad Gita, we have another Gita called Astavakra Gita. That's from the discussion between Astavakra and King Janaka. So we'll come to that, but now baby Astavakra is born totally, distorted. And in fact, what happens when his mother was in her 10th month of pregnancy, then they're still starving. They're like very poor. And she says, now we are going to have a baby. You have to get some money so that we can take care of the baby, and also have some food for ourselves. So Kahoda Rishi, the sage Kahoda, wants to go to Janaka and get some money from there. So he leaves the place, and he's not there when Astavakra was born. And during that time, King Janaka's place. So this is not the Janaka of Sita. Okay, just for the kids, I'm just saying. Most of the kings who ruled Mithila, they were all called Janaka. So here, this is much earlier than King Janaka. But this is another king who was realized soul. He was Rishi as well as Raja, right? So a lot of scholars, the Vedic Pandits, were in his kingdom, in his palace. One of them was a sage by name Bandi. What he used to do is whoever cannot win him over arguments, he will throw them in the ocean. So that's what he used to do. So Kahoda Maharshi also goes there, and he cannot win over Bandi, and he's thrown into the ocean. So when Astavakra was born, he had not seen his father, and Uddalaka, his grandfather, tells Sujata, his mother, Astavakra's mother, not to disclose this. So Astavakra is growing up without the knowledge of his father. And though with all these distortions, he is so intense in search of the truth, in search of studying the Vedas and getting the knowledge. This is another example of the great the determination, the intense dedication and devotion he had towards his goal. The body shape and all of that were not of importance to him. That's why we call them like specially abled, right? He didn't care about this, even if his friends or the other students made fun of him. He never bothered about it. He was so deep into the study of the scriptures, the Vedas, and the pursuit of the truth that didn't bother him. But as a boy, he thought, they told him that mother told him that he assumed that he was with his grandfather's place. Uddalaka is his father. He assumed, and he was playing there. And Uddalaka also had a son by name Shvetaketu, right? We just learned about that. They were of the same age. It was so common those days that the mother and the daughter would be almost pregnant at the same time. Sometimes even the daughter would do the whatever the post the maternal things for the mother, right? So those were common. So Shvetaketu and Astavakra, they were of the same age, and Astavakra thought that Uddalaka was his father. So one day, while they are playing, just like Dhruva's story that we all have heard, he was sitting on the lap of Uddalaka, and Shvetaketu comes and says, hey, this is my father's lap, you get down, and I have to sit on my father's lap. He was shocked. Is he not my father? I thought he is my father. And Shvetaketu says, no, he is not your father. The kids fight, right? And then Astavakra comes and cries in front of his mother, Sujata. And Sujata is scared now, though she's in tears, because Astavakra is very determined, and he cursed his own father he pointed out the mistake of his father. Now she, doesn't want to hide the secret anymore. So he says, this is what happened. Your father, went there and never returned. We don't know what happened to him. He went to King Janaka's place and never returned. So Astavakra, wants to, get back his son, father. So he wants to go there. But how does he want to go there? He calls Shvetaketu. See, you should see a difference here, right? In Dhruva's story, the fight of the kids reached the mothers, Suruchi and Suniti, and they fought, and that's what happened. The mothers, they came into the fight of the kids. But here the kids fought, and in the next minute, they were again friends. As long as, the elders don't get into the fight of the kids, it all goes fine. Kids are kids. They will fight for a minute, and the next minute, they'll be good friends. So, but if the elders come into that, then that is when all the problems start. So anyway, coming back to this story, Shvetaketu and Astavakra are now friends. So Astavakra wants Shvetaketu also to accompany him to Janaka's place. How does he entice him? He has to come. So he says, let's go there. There is a big yaga that's happening there. Why should we go there? In the yaga, that I heard that there's a very grand yaga that's going to happen there. There'll be a lot of discourses among scholars. So it'll be very interesting to listen to that. Not only that, we'll get good food. We will have, sumptuous food. That will be nice. There'll be a lot of Veda Ghosha. That will be very, soothing to hear. So all of that will be there, and we'll not only will have good food, we'll also learn a lot of stuff. Come, let's go to Janaka's kingdom. So both Shvetaketu and Astavakra, they go there. And when they are reaching there, King Janaka is going on a chariot towards the Yaga Mantapa. And, that's when Astavakra, he intervenes. He says the king's servants, they are stopping Astavakra and others. Then Astavakra says, this is not right. As per Shastras, this is not the right value. What is right? The youngsters or specially abled ladies, pregnant women, and those carrying weight, they should be given the path first. So what we call here as right of way, right? It's not the right, it is the dharma, it's the value. I don't want to call it as a right, but a value, right? But it's a good value. So that's what our Shastras say. And so first we should go, and then the king should follow. He might be a king, but these people take precedence as per the Shastras. So King Janaka is astonished that this small kid, he's just 12 years of age, and he's talking these great things from Shastra. The King Janaka, as I said, is a learned and enlightened person. He says, that's right, let them go first and we will follow. So after that, then they want to enter the palace. Again, the gatekeepers there, they stop these boys. They think that they're just onlookers who have come here to see this great yaga. But this place is only for great scholars, elderly people, and you guys, it's not the place for you. Then Astavakra says that we are not. We might look like young boys, but we are really we are also Vruddhas. Vruddha is in Sanskrit Vardhate, right? They have grown up, Vruddha. So we are Charitra Vruddha. We are Vruddhas by conduct. So, and we also have learned Vedas. There is we say Jnana Vruddha and all of those words you might have heard. And here they introduce another word. Vyasa Maharshi introduces another word, Charitra Vruddha. So that's what Astavakra tells the gatekeepers. We are Charitra Vruddha. And we also have knowledge in Vedas. But they say you are a small boy. To learn the Vedas and all, it takes ages. You just looks like you're still now growing up. You need a lot of experience of life and a lot of years you have to spend, and then you will learn. You'll learn something. But just being a boy here, you can't say that you know Vedas. That's what happens. These they're like amazing whiz kids are what we say. You will never know that unless there are certain incidents happen or they do some great stuff. Otherwise, the normal people will never realize that the strength or the great the skills, the knowledge that they have. That's what was happening here with Dwarapalakas. They say that we know Vedas and we have come here to even to debate with Bandi. So these the Dwarapalakas, the gatekeepers say that's the most dangerous thing you can do, right? If you lose, you will be thrown into the ocean. Astavakra says, we can debate just like, with such a rigor and intensity. Like if a sun comes, all the stars you won't see the stars when sun is there. With that kind of confidence, he answers the gatekeepers. So what happens? What are the kind of the discourse that happens with Bandi? How does Astavakra then finally he becomes the teacher of Janaka? We will go through that part in the next session. Thank you. Om Swasti Prajabhya Paripalayantam न्यायेन मार्गेण महीं महिषाः गोब्राह्मणेभ्यः शुभमस्तु नित्यं लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।